podcast is a member of WildGamesProductions.com and D20Radio.com.
Between the time when wargamers played with chainmail and the rise of the Wizards of the Coast, there was an age of gamers. And unto this, Gygax, destined to bear the crown jewel of TSR upon a troubled brow, to show you all how to roll for initiative.
The Roll for Initiative podcast, volume number 2, issue number 98. I am DM Vince, sitting alone tonight, but I have a special guest for you. A nice little interview with DM Scotty from the Dungeon Master's Craft. Am I correct with that, Scotty?
The DM's Craft.
I'm sorry, DM's Craft. Oh, well, Dungeon Master's Craft, so yeah, the abbreviation.
Right.
And it's on YouTube. We're featuring you as a video, I would say video podcast. I guess it's a video TV show, sort of, because it has a really cool intro now at this point.
Right.
And every week, well, I should say every couple of days, it seems, for a while, you were putting up videos how to craft dungeon tiles and how to do traps and things with just average cardboard laying around the house. So I wanted to invite you on the show because it's gridless, first of all, and when you play first edition, most people don't use grids or hexes or anything, so it'd be kind of cool to hear your methods and how you came along with it. So how did you start playing D&D? Let's start with that.
Well, I started, probably most of your guests did. I was a teenager when I started, and of course it was first edition. And I played for a while, and then I kind of got out of it. And then I got married and had kids, and then I played with them some, and in the 90s. And then I stopped for a while again. But I had some friends at work, and they were like, you know, D&D was so fun. You know, we should play again. And I was like, great, that's a great idea. So of course I got nominated to be the DM. So, so I started DMing again, and I just really loved miniatures. And I wasn't happy with any of the choices you have for choosing to represent the dungeon. Like, I don't like dungeon tiles. I don't like the grid on the dungeon tiles. And dungeon tiles seem so like you don't have much choice with them. I mean, you can build certain layouts, but you really are pretty limited in what you can build, unless you have a ton of tiles.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of the 3D stuff you can do. Some people cast the stuff, but you know, that takes a lot of time, a lot of money. And I've done rooms that are, 2 feet by 1.5 feet. If you cast that, and put that on the table, that's going to be like 300 pounds. I mean, that's a lot of casting stuff. Also, you can draw maps, which are okay, but they're just not as cool, So I just came up with this method. I thought with the cardboard, and I thought, I could just spray it with the texture paint and add details, and because I don't like the walls either. I think the walls on some of the cast terrain, the walls tend to get in the way of the play, and I think and block how well you can see into the tile. So I came up with a method of doing the cardboard tiles with the simulated walls, like putting just the cardboard strip as the wall and not an actual wall.
Right, it's like a guardrail or something like that, pretty much.
Right, exactly. So it gives you the impression that there's a wall there, but there's actually, you can actually see the entire tile.
So how did you pick cardboard of all things? You just looked at it and said, wow, this is really cool, cardboard works with everything, or? Yeah,
I was like, this is, why spend a bunch of money, getting foam core and that kind of stuff? Mm-hmm. Why not just use cardboard? I mean, it works just as well. And if you can build any shape you want, and then if you you don't want to save the tiles, you can just chuck them when you're done. I mean, I do save them, but if you didn't want to or didn't have the space, you could just get rid of them. So because they're so dirt cheap to make.
Well, yeah, you can make a whole bunch of generic tiles and then just hold them in a box and keep recycling them over and over again. Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. But a lot of times I make totally unique dungeons every time that we play. Yeah, so. I noticed all you have is cardboard, some spray paint, and a glue gun, which isn't really that expensive at all. I know. I looked at some glue gun prices here, and some of the basic glue guns go for like $10. Oh yeah.
I like to use two sizes of glue guns. I like to use the regular size, and then they have a glue gun called a mini glue gun, and it's really nice for like doing small details.
So how did the first time you put your project together, was it a mess? Did it take you a long time? Or what's the, like, I should say the learning curve, say a new person started doing what you were doing, following your directions?
I've had a lot of people send me pictures of stuff they've done that looks really, really good, and they're like, they'll tell me, they're like, oh, I never thought I could do this, and I saw your videos, and I just started, and look what I came up with, and it's just like, I'm just like, wow, that's fantastic, and I love it because then I get ideas from other people's dungeons and crafts that I may not have thought of, or get inspired also.
So it's a pretty easy learning curve if someone just watched your videos.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's not that hard to learn. It's really, and the kind of the goal of it was to get people who may not want to craft or think they could actually craft, that they can say, oh, I can do this too. I could have some really cool dungeons for my group, and inexpensively and quick and fun. So that was my goal. A really neat DIY project for yourself to do. So. Oh, definitely. And it really doesn't take that long to do. Right. I like the episode when you started getting into traps. Now, that was kind of like thinking outside the box. Is that just something that came to you one day and you figured, hey, why not just add a trap to the side? Or well, what I do is when I think of how I want to represent it on the tile or in the game, particularly with a trap, I think of how I should represent it. So, like the video I just released, the players are skirting around this walkway that's over this cistern, this with murky water in it, and there's a part where it collapses. But I made like a little piece of cardstock to put over the pathway when it collapses, so that it wouldn't give the players any idea that could collapse. If you make something that's could come off the tile or something, or has cracks in it, or it looks like it could pull out, then that gives your players an idea that something could happen. So with the spear trap, like you're talking about, I just crafted those separately because I wanted to represent them in the game. For one thing, what happened is the spear trap shot out of the side of the hallway, and if it hit the person, it would impale them basically on the wall. Right. So not only was it a trap that trapped the person who got hit, the other players had to try to pull the trap off of the person and get them free and get through, because there were enemies on the other side. Yeah, I noticed that they were wooden little toothpicks that you pulled out of like a cocktail toothpick pretty much, and just carved it into little spears on the wall there. Oh yeah. I just cut the ends off the cocktail sticks, put 2 strips of cardboard, put them through the corrugation, and then made a little base for it, and that was basically it. I mean. Yeah, and you had the master map on your side to show you where it went. Mm-hmm. So, oh, yeah. So when they walk past a certain point, boom, there's a trap. Right. Because you don't have grids, so, but you're the DM. I mean, you know where stuff is. So, like you say, you have a map. You have your own map. So, speaking of no grids, I noticed that you also made mini little rulers for all the players as well. Yeah. Which helps when we play first edition, because we don't use boxes or squares or hexes or anything. Right. But, I've had people that are so confused with this concept. It's like people are so ingrained with using the grids that they're totally confused when you they're like, they just don't. It's like some people just don't get it. Like it's like, you mean I can move any direction without any kind of movement penalty or anything? Because in certain games, if you move diagonally, you have to pay you have to pay 2 squares of movement to move it diagonally again, and all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, you just move where you want. You measure. In later D&D and everything, every 5 feet is an inch. So, it's like in Pathfinder and everything. So, you just measure. You just measure where you want to go. And what I did with the sticks is I just got like a 1/4 inch piece of square dowel or wood, and then just cut it in links to the character's movement. So if the character could move 6 inches, I would cut them a 6-inch stick. If a character could move 5 inches, I'd cut them a 5-inch stick and then mark it off with the inches, so they could if they were going around a corner or something like that, they could tell how far they went. Have you ever had any players cheat a little bit with those sticks? Or?
Because I could just see some people like little bit ahead.
If you're going to do this kind of thing, you got to be a little bit lenient because it's not an exact science.
Yeah.
If it's less than a half an inch off, I'll give it to the player. They're a hero. It's like they should be able. I always give them the benefit of the doubt. Because it's not, like I say, it's not an exact science. So I give them benefit of the doubt, but they're pretty good about it. A lot of them, in the shorter movements, they can just move their character like they know. Like we all know what a certain movement is, like a couple inches or whatever. So we don't even have to measure. So a lot of times we're not even measuring.
Cool.
Yeah.
I saw I haven't finished watching all because you're about 30-something episodes up, like 31 at this point of this
right.
recording. And I was going through most of them the other day. There's one you were doing a puzzle trap, it looked like. Oh, yeah. Can you explain that one a little bit, how you went through that thought process of making that one up?
Yeah, I was like... the dungeon I was doing seemed to be appropriate to have a couple traps in it. To me, not traps. I mean puzzles. Certain dungeons don't really seem, or layers don't really seem appropriate for puzzles, but this one particularly did. So I wanted to have a couple puzzles, and I have a couple players who are really good at doing puzzles, and some who kind of snooze. But if it's not too long, it's okay. So. Basically, I kind of perused the internet and just kind of that's how I tend to start. I kind of peruse the internet and get ideas. I had found one that was kind of a little similar to it, and so it kind of gave me the grain of the idea, and then I worked around that. And then what I thought, what it might be fun to do is when the players enter the room and start the puzzle, I started an actual timer. Mm-hmm. So the doors. So basically, I explained that the doors were slowly coming down. The stone doors of the room were slowly coming down as they were in real time. So they had a very limited time to figure out this puzzle.
Okay, interesting. And how'd the players do with that puzzle?
They did well. One thing I did too was I would have they could do intelligence checks to get clues. So if they made a certain DC roll, I would give them a clue, and they had made an intelligence roll, so I gave them like a clue that it had to do with light and dark kind of thing. So because it had to do with the phases of the sun and then night. Oh, so in the night part, they had to extinguish all light sources, and that would like complete the puzzle. Now with the doors sliding down, what I did was, if it got close to the puzzle or to the doors shutting and them being entombed in this place forever, I would of course I would tell them as the DM, and they could get out automatically if they decided to go out. If they waited past a certain point, then they would have to make a check to slide under the door or something. But they did it in plenty of time. They didn't have any problem doing the time limit.
Yeah, I noticed you spent an episode or two building doors as well, which was kind of cool. I never thought about that. Like the double doors and the single dungeon doors and everything.
Oh yeah, like you can see, it's like I'll have the tile, but I'll generally have like a 3D door. Like I like to have certain 3D objects in the room. Mm-hmm. Like I've done one on pillars. I mean the figures are 3D, so they're 3D representations. So I like to do 3D things in the room. I don't like to have the 3D walls because it hampers play. Yeah. The smaller the tile, the more it's harder to get in there and move your stuff around. So that's why I don't like to do the walls 3D. But everything else, I generally like to do 3D in the tile.
Now, let's talk a little about your painting techniques. I noticed you use a couple things like dry brush technique and wet brush. Did you search the internet for? Because I know nothing about painting. So did you pick these things up from painting minis in the past, or did some research on that, or?
Yeah, I've been a miniature painter for quite a long time. So I knew these techniques already. Okay. So I knew the washing technique and the dry brushing technique and all that stuff. So, and yeah, if you're new to this, the internet is a great place to find all these. There's tons of videos, tons of information on how to paint miniatures. And I just carried it over to the tiles. I just added that whole dry brush and wash technique.
Right, you were spraying it one color and you were spraying another. How'd you figure out the color combo? Did that take a while to figure that out, or you just kind of figured, hey, it would work, why not?
Do you mean the texture paint?
Yeah, the texture paint and the color. How you got the dungeon that certain color, the musty.
Oh, yeah. Depending on what kind of dungeon I'm doing. So if I'm doing a dungeon or a castle or something that's newer, you don't want it to look as grungy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But if you're doing like an old dungeon or something, or a crypt or something like that, you want to do black. You can do black streaks on the tile with some wash. What I like to do is spray. It's almost like airbrushing. You spray the flat black over the tile, and it darkens up the texture paint. So that's a nice way to make something look grungy or darker. So that's an easy way you can just, from kind of a shiny new dungeon, which might be a castle that's well kept, to, like a grimy, old dungeon that's, dirt and blood and all kinds of, stuff in it.
Yeah, I enjoyed, and I also enjoyed you had you went even a step further and did some player handouts, like I guess it was the troll in the woods, or was it the gnoll in the woods?
Yeah, it was this troll in the woods that had ripped off this ogre skin, because my players are running this kingdom, and they had met this troll before, and they had helped her, and she has a youngin, and her youngin got stolen by this monster kingdom was gonna attack the players' kingdom, and she wanted their help, so she had ripped the skin off one of these ogres and kind of scrolled out on it like a message to the players. I love to give player handouts. It just really adds to the experience, I think.
So how many videos do you plan on doing a week if you had the chance? 2 or 3? Is that all the time you have, or you'd love to do it every day if you could?
Yeah, I really don't have a chance to do it every day. I think people would love me to do it every day because there's so many things I still haven't shown yet. I mean, there's just tons of stuff I have that I can show. But I try to get at least one a week. That really varies. Like this week, I got like 4 videos this week because I had 2 shorter videos I did one on materials and tools, and then I did one on the dungeon tile, and I did another one on a craft. So I got a lot in this week because I'm going to be gone next week. But yeah, I try to do at least one a week, and I usually post it on Sunday.
What can we expect in the future to see from your show? Any hints on what you might do next?
Yeah, I've had some people ask. I have a forum going now. A friend of mine started up for me, and it's great because people can post things and I can post responses, or they can post cool stuff. But yeah, I wanted to do some things with doing more 3D type things, because I have done. I've actually done cardboard. Like hovels and cottages and stuff, and use them. And I wanted to show that. That's one thing I wanted to move into showing. Mm-hmm. And that's not so bad because they're kind of spread out. They're not all clustered together. If I had a city, I may not do that because it would just be hard to reach in there. But if just a random hovel or some huts or something, 3D is not so bad. But one difference I do that a lot of people didn't think of or don't think of when they do the 3D stuff is, like, you'll see maybe a hut, mm-hmm. and the top will lift off the hut, right?
Right.
So you got this little teeny space inside that you're trying to reach in there to put stuff in. Well, what I do is I lift the entire hut off. So I've got the circular tile that represents the hut, mm-hmm. and then the hut just sits on top of the tile. So when the play moves into the hut, I can just lift the entire hut off.
Oh, that's cool.
So you're not trying to reach in there in this little teeny hut trying to move stuff around.
Yeah.
With walls that are, a couple inches, 2-3 inches tall.
Yeah, you got your Cheetos hands going in there and slipping around on the figures, right?
Plus it makes it easier to see. You can see what's going. Everybody can see what's going on.
Yeah, instead of somebody asking, "Where am I at?" And,
right? Can you move me? Or
Have you done anything? I don't remember seeing any video about it, but maybe like doing like a treasure chest or maybe like an altar or something.
Right. I have had people ask me about stuff like this, and I've had some people send me pictures that they've done like cardboard furniture and stuff. A lot of the accoutrements of the room I use, like chests and stuff. I actually use the Hearst Arts and cast them and then paint them up as 3D objects. But there's nothing stopping you from making out of cardboard. Like I say, I generally don't do that, and I've had people ask about it. But I usually do just do the cast stuff or buy it on eBay.
Yeah, because I was thinking about designing maybe like a treasure chest and seeing how that works. I mean, it's going to probably be a little bit of a pain to get it that small, but it might be worth it. I
tell you what would be good to do that with. There's a clay called Super Sculpey. Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
It's oven baked clay. Basically, you put it in the oven for like it's at 275 and it bakes for like 15 minutes and it becomes pretty hard. That clay is great because you can continue to work it until you're done with it, and then you can put it in the oven and bake it. That'd be a great way to make little chests and little furniture and stuff like that. I have made wagon wheels actually out of it.
Oh, really?
Like I'll cut a circular piece out and then do a little bit of detail with woodwork and that kind of thing.
Interesting. I guess the last question I can ask you is, one of the last ones is that the room with all the windows. Is that your basement or what? The one you're standing in front of in the beginning of the videos. I'm always curious where that room is.
That's actually a room at my work that I do it in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It is a pretty neat looking room. It has those glass block windows.
Yeah, I was just like, wow.
Yeah, it's a great backdrop. But yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, so I guess I'll just end this by doing my usual surprise question of if you could be a household appliance, which one would you be and why would you be that one?
Let's see. I would be a toaster oven because I don't think anyone should eat nuked food.
Okay. Well, Scotty, thank you for joining me. Is there a direct link so we can get to your videos, or you just have a search function to get to you? How can we get to you on YouTube really quick?
Oh, it'd be if you just type The DM's Craft, you'll find me.
Okay, and your forums?
Even if you do it on Google, you'll find me.
Okay, and then if your forums, how can we get to those? What's the address of that?
I don't have the address in front of me, but if you go to my videos, the last 3 or 4 videos I've done have the address underneath the video.
Okay. Well, hopefully in the future you'll get like a .com or something to redirect.
Right, yeah, I'm not at that point yet, but
when you get enough viewership, when the thousands of people start pouring in for DM Scotty videos.
I don't know about that, but everybody is welcome. So,
well, thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a good night, Scotty.
Hey, you take care. Nice talking to you.
Typical. Of all the evil creatures in the world, I'd like to find one with table manners.
And what are you kidding me? I spent years cultivating the worst table manners on the planet.
Table manners.
Okay, we're here in Table Manners, and we're going to talk a little bit more, making this an artsy, craftsy types of show. DM Will joined me for this segment. They're talking about painting minis. And Will, you constantly paint minis all the time.
Oh, yeah, so many times. I mean, I can't begin to tell you how many thousands of minis that I have that have yet to be, painted.
I know a couple people asked about different cheap bases for minis. There was a post on the forum by T-Man about that.
Right.
And a lot of people said a penny or a washer. But what is your suggestion for a homemade cheap base for a mini?
Well, to be honest with you, there was a game that just came out by Mongoose Publishing called, and you saw the pictures of the ships on it from Starfleet Battles.
Yeah.
It's called Starfleet, A Call to War. Excuse me. And the guy that owns the gaming store, I didn't like the bases. The bases, I don't think were wide enough. They're circular bases for those minis. Now, understand, those minis are made of metal, and these are unusually heavy. Now, people are familiar with Flames of War or stuff like that. We're using World War II minis. They know where I'm coming from. But so what he did was, with these the plastic bases, he didn't like them. And they were about as big as the dollar coin.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone knows. I'm trying to think, is it the dollar coin? No, what's the bigger one? It is a dollar coin, the real big one.
The silver dollar, yeah.
Yeah, the silver dollar, that kind of base. And so what he did was he went down and got washers and stuff like that. But that ended up being pretty expensive because these washers are about 2 inches wide.
Ooh, that's too big.
Well, for these type of miniatures, you needed that, and to maintain, keep them from falling down easily because these are big metal miniatures. Now, when we're talking about the 28 millimeter miniatures, and that's what the miniatures are pretty much, they're 28 millimeter to almost 30. And I hate to tell people this, but it looks like they're almost jumping to 32, which is sad because now it doesn't conform but to the regular standards for some of these games now. But the washers is a good idea. Pennies are too small. Now, pennies would be perfect if you're using the old lead minis from back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And the 70s. Yeah, pennies, perfect. Or a quarter. A quarter would be awesome if you want to use quarters. But, you're just wasting money if you're using, quarters and stuff like that. But it's very difficult. But now I recommended them to say, if you want a 100 round basis for 28 millimeters, there's a guy online on eBay selling 100 of them for $15. You can't beat that.
No, yeah. Well, I was thinking that he can use, and this is really a cheap, quick way, is use Legos.
Legos will be good.
If you get some of like the, you can go to the store and buy those random set boxes for like $5-6.
Yeah.
And just do a little knife chopping on a couple of them, and you can have some bases right there.
Oh, yeah, excellent. If you want to do wood, wood is even, just as good, or corkboard.
Yeah, but that's getting into buying a lot of things, so...
Well, corkboard actually is really inexpensive. The thing is, though, you just need to get the drill. Now, see, I'm just assuming people have normal tools and everything, and if you have an electric drill, you know how they cut a hole into the wall with that drill thing, that drill bit?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, just use that and use that on corkboard, and there you go. You got another thing. It just depends. Well, if now just understand, and this is my philosophy. If you buy cheap, you're going to get cheap.
Yeah, true. If you want to put however much you want to put into it, it's what you're going to get back. Yeah.
That's right. And if you want cheap, you're going to get cheap, and then guess what? You're going to have something that probably won't work that much. If you use the minis a lot, it depends if you want square bases or round bases. I don't know what kind of bases people want these days. It is what it is. But like I said, go ahead.
I was saying you could take a page from DM Scotty from the DM Crafter and use cardboard. That way you can color whatever you want.
Yeah, see, I have no problem with cardboard. Cardboard is an issue for me now because I'm finding out that it warps depending on how you're going to use it, whether you glue it. You got to make sure that it's somehow that it's what do you call that stuff that you spray? Material to keep it waterproof. I can't even think what it's called anymore.
Sealant?
Yeah, some type of sealant. There's a spray sealant you can use. Just make sure you spray seal cardboard because when cardboard gets damp,
yeah,
or there's humidity and all that, it will absorb it like a sponge. Then it'll start warping. The next thing you know, the miniatures are falling down.
I wonder if you could use that clear coat sealant that they use for painting minis.
You can use that. I see no reason why. But personally, I think that's more guided toward miniatures with acrylic paints that absorb some moisture. It just depends. I've been doing this stuff so long and everything. I just stick with the basics and everything. And now, like what I'm doing with the Hearst art molds, because I'm using bases on all of that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
You have to put bases on, otherwise, you're going to rub it down to nothing. It's almost like chalk, kind of hard chalk or something. But, I just go down there to the hobby store or something to see what they got there. And like I said, it's actually very inexpensive.
Yeah, some people were asking, well, what's the best minis to use and where can you get them? Well, I think right now it's a little expensive, but I think they dropped the prices on the Warhammer minis, the Fantasy Warhammer minis.
As a matter of fact, you are correct. They did drop the price. I noticed that not too long ago and everything. And as a matter of fact, once I start getting paid and everything, I'm going to start getting more of them. Like the vampire counts, for example.
Yeah, those are cool looking.
Now you got Reaper. They have the Warlords set. If you get 11 zombies or 11 ghouls or 11 whatever of that particular format that they have there for that line of minis, you're talking $39.95.
Yeah.
For 11 minis, and I'm just saying, like, Ain't no way. You can go to doggone to the, like you said, to Warhammer Fantasy. And I think yesterday I saw the box of zombies. I think there's either 12 or 18 in there for $25.
Yeah, and you paint them yourself, obviously, but same thing with the Reaper ones. The Reaper ones are all metal, though. They're lead, I should say, lead.
For the Warlord side of the house, yes. For the Warlord line of minis, they're all metal as far as I'm concerned. And when I went there yesterday, they're all metal. Now, don't get me wrong now. That line of minis is very good.
Solid.
Gets you a lot of minis, but $40 is just a lot of money for most people out there these days.
Well, they do have... I've been to their warehouse actually this weekend past playing in a game, and they do have other minis there that are really cheap that you could pick up too. So just browse through their catalog before making a final pick.
I will tell you this, though, and this is the good thing I tell people. When they go to the stores, go through their line of Reaper miniatures, and I'm going to tell you why. Because there's no... I'm just telling you. Yesterday, I went to the gaming store yesterday and found a miniature for $3.99.
Yeah.
You will find out that a lot of these gaming stores that have Reaper miniatures and been stocking Reaper miniatures for the last, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you might find some of the older Reaper miniatures there, and they will still sell them for $3.99 or $2.99 or whatever. The one that I picked up yesterday actually is one that I haven't seen. How do you pronounce that? The Penangolin? You know what that is, Vince?
No.
That is the vampire creature that's in the Monster Manual 2. I'm sorry, the Fiend Folio. It's only female. At night, when she finds and she attacks female victims, she will go for female victims only, unless she's very desperate. Then she'll go for male. But what happens is, at nighttime, her head detaches from her body. And the organs come with it, and then she flies around to her victim, then she lays there, bites them, sucks the blood out of them or whatever. Her organs get, big and fat and bloated because it's full of blood. Then she flies back to her body, her organs slide in the hole and everything, and her head attaches back to the body. I found that miniature yesterday, and that was actually a very interesting miniature.
Yes, Penanggalan.
Yeah.
I couldn't even pronounce that one.
Yeah, I say Penangolin or whatever.
That looks right, Penangolin, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, it's a very interesting creature. I got that yesterday, but the miniature is only of the head and the organs as it's flying. So and I got that for $3.99, and that was actually one of the newer ones. I was shocked to see it.
That's cool. I know Reaper, since they do produce at the warehouse so many minis, they have discounts on deformed or slightly ruined minis that they mess up.
Yes. And I tell people, get them, because I learned that there's lots of people out there that actually modify their minis. That when I go to the game, I see them, they're cutting things off or they're adding things. And Reaper, and I love Reaper. Great company, just awesome. But, they provide the weapon packs and the adventure packs and everything. So if you don't like the sword they're carrying, cut it off and add a new sword to it or something. It's pretty neat.
Well, I thought it was neat because they had a bunch of zombies there, and like the arm was disformed or the leg wasn't formed right, and I was like, that'd be kind of cool. It'd be a different type of zombie. Well, who cares? It's a zombie. Doesn't he look perfect?
Yep, no doubt. And I tell anyone that with all the miniatures that I buy and what I run through and paint and everything, some of them have defects. For example, in BattleTech, the introductory box set, I will never be able to get a box with at least one BattleTech in there that's messed up. So, like one of them, I can't think of the name of the mech right now, he has no arms. They're just, one of those things that happens, Yeah. The quality control stinks. But guess what? I could still use that mech and say, well, what happened to his arms? Oh, his arms are there. You just don't see them. Just like the one-armed dwarf from the Undead supplement, from Rolaids,
Yeah, true.
You don't see the other arm.
So speaking of the minis now, painting the minis now, I know you're a big painter, like you said.
Yep.
And I'm not really that great, but I've kind of dabbled into it a little bit. I found that painting my minis when I first start, I usually paint them black. I don't know. Do you do that method?
Okay, when I prime minis, I look at the mini, and what I do is I study the mini, and this is what I think that most of the artists that I speak to, most painters, I ask them, what do they normally do? What I do is that when I go to a store, I buy me a mini,
right,
and then when I bring it home, I look at it. Okay. I have to study it, and I say, what do I want to do to this mini? What do I want to paint it? Depending on what it is will dictate whether or not I prime it black, gray, or white.
Okay, so give me an example. Say, we'll go back to the zombie. Say it's a zombie.
A zombie, I will paint a neutral, the neutral gray. I will paint them gray.
Gray. And the reasoning behind that? Because I'm curious.
It's because of the flesh color that I'm going to put on there.
And black will be too dark for the color background.
I think black would be too dark, and if I really want to do some inking or any of that other stuff, I'll just do that later on. But I'm going to use a gray on them because of the flesh color that I'm going to use. Now, you bring out black. Now, guess what I do with skeletons? With them, I paint black.
Okay, because of the white you're going to put over the black.
Yeah, well, actually, bone color, a white, or a, I'm trying to think what they call it now for Warhammer with the paint. I can't think of the paint.
It's called.
It's bone, yellow, a bone, whatever.
Bone white.
It's a bone-ish color. It's a yellowish, dirty-looking color.
Well, the kit that I have from the Games Workshop mini kit to start you out painting, they have bone white in it. So
that's what it is. I guess it's called bone white, but that's what I use.
Yeah, I look at the kit. It says bone white. They give you like 12 different little mini paints and a bunch of brushes, a little thing to hold the mini figures while you paint it. It's pretty cool. And the black accents the in between the bones and everything. And what I'll do is later on I'll post a couple pictures of how I've done skeletons over the years. But normally I will paint them black, and then I add the bone white to it. Now when you talk about zombies, because they still have a lot of flesh on them, or when you painted humanoids or humans and creatures that actually live in, I want them to have some type of flesh color, and that's why I usually normally paint them either a neutral gray or white. Now, if I'm painting humanoid creatures, let's say human characters from like the desert or something, then I'm gonna use. It just depends. Good. It just depends. Sometimes I'll dip. Mm-hmm. That's a technique a lot of people don't use, is dipping. Dipping straight out of the. They sell these cans. These cans go for about $20 to $30 a pop. Mm-hmm. After you paint them in it, you're going to dip them. Oh, okay. Darker. It's a real thin type of ink-like stuff. And, people say that inks. Inks are very important. So are washes. You got to know when to dry brush. You have to, all that stuff, All right. So we're painting the zombie here. You said you picked a neutral gray, you said. Is that the actual color you could buy, or you mix that? Well, no. With primer, you want to spray it. Oh, spray it. Okay. Yeah, I get the spray can primer. And I'm going to tell people, do not go to a gaming store. And, I got to tell my friend Chris. Sorry, Chris, but I got to do this. To the gaming store and buy those $15, $16 cans of paint. That's absolutely ridiculous. I don't care what anyone says. Go to Home Depot, go to Walmart. You can buy a can of spray primer, white. Don't get gloss. Get the regular flat white, flat black, flat gray. They cost $2.99, maybe $1.99. Those are just as good as the primers from Warhammer, from the Flames of War people and all that. You don't need to spend $17 on a can of primer. Nah, that's absolutely ridiculous. It is ridiculous to pay that amount. Now, and let me tell you about primer. And this is where people really mess up. Okay. You don't have to cover the entire miniature with primer. When my miniature, see, some people put them in a cardboard box. I don't do that. I get a piece of flat cardboard. I take it out there, just make sure that it's elevated, and just go around it, shh. That's it. You don't need to cover the entire thing does not have to be covered in primer. You don't have to do that. No, just as long as you get the 90% of it, I think, right? Pretty much. Sometimes you'll miss underneath where the groin's at, down on the bottoms, underneath the armpits, maybe underneath the chin, maybe. So it just depends on how the miniature looks. There's some places where the primer won't get depending on the angle of where you do the primer. But there's some people they'll go, shh. For like 15 seconds, the entire thing is covered in primer, and it's covered up. You can't see nothing. So basically, just do a nice spritz around it, and try to be thorough, but don't be over thorough. Then. Yeah, be careful on the primer. Yeah, you don't have to do so much. A can of primer lasts you 6 months to a year, depending on how much you're painting. Wow. Yeah, it just varies. But you don't have to put down 10,000. Well, I think people were putting it inside of a box because they were doing it inside the house. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people also about primer, do not, do it inside the house. The best place to do any type of priming is outside. Weather has a big indicator, is a big factor in that, because if it's real moist, humid outside, it's going to take the miniature longer to dry. So you definitely want to, prime a miniature in a dry area, a little breezy maybe. You might want to put a fan on it if you do it inside. I don't know. Just make sure the window's open, because primer is explosive.
Well, yeah.
And it is hazardous to your health.
Well, I remember a long time ago when I was painting minis with one of my friends, we used to go in his father's basement, and because he had a whole workbench down there, and he painted minis himself, so we just stayed down in the basement and did it the whole time.
Yeah, you can do that and everything. Just remember now, just like I said, be careful and be safe, because you're dealing with hazardous, chemicals and materials.
Right.
And it's the same thing when you get miniatures and you're gluing them. If you use like Zip Kicker and the Zip Kicker glue, I don't know if you're familiar with that or not.
No, not at all.
When you get metal miniatures and before you start painting, you might want to glue them together first before you start painting. I think that would be the logical thing to do.
Yes.
But Zip Kicker glue let's say you're gluing an arm with a socket to the base of the mini where the socket joint is at, or the ball, so where it's supposed to go. You're gonna take the Zip Kicker, you're gonna spritz it on that joint or wherever it's supposed to go, and then the glue goes on the arm of the socket, and then you put them together and hold it. Now, what that Zip Kicker does is there's a chemical reaction to it, and it solidifies instantly. You only do this with metal miniatures, though. If you do the plastic miniatures, the chemical reaction is hot enough that it will melt the plastic. So only do that with metal miniatures.
All right, there's a tip: metal miniatures only.
Yes, and be careful with it. This stuff is highly toxic. It has to be in a place where it's well ventilated. Be very careful with Zip Kicker. That stuff will knock you on the ground. It will kill you. So please be careful.
There's some warnings for you. All right, so we got the mini. Let's go back to the mini. We got the mini primed, ready to go.
Yes.
How long do we wait for it to dry before we start painting?
Oh, you could do that instantly. I say no more than 20, 30 minutes after you prime it. Some people say 15, 20. I just say 30 minutes, but you could do it 10, 15 minutes after you prime it, because primer dries very quickly, especially if the conditions are perfect. Dry weather, windy, breezy outside, whatever, as long as it's completely dry.
Okay. So we're painting our mini. What do you suggest doing? An overall painting to start it, like the skin colors, or?
I always do that and everything. It depends on the mini, though. It really depends on the mini. If there's a lot of skin, is there a lot of clothes, is there hair and everything? So what I normally do is if I'm having, let's say, a human fighter, I see his face, his neck, and his arms and his legs. I start with those first. I'm gonna just go ahead and put down the base coat first. And then I work on all the other stuff then from there on, armor and so on. Then I go back and then do the second coating to the legs or to the skin areas and everything until I like, the texture or the tone.
Well, what do you suggest to wait for the second coating? Like an hour or so, or a couple hours?
Now, it depends on what kind of paints you're using and how long you left it on. Usually, if it depends on how much skin is there, too, and everything. Sometimes it can be up to an hour. Again, it all depends on the weather factors in there. If it's really dry and everything, you can probably just go ahead and do it after 30 to 45 minutes. With larger miniatures, with really large miniatures and everything, it's usually longer than that.
Well, let's use the Warhammer miniatures, for example.
Those are easy.
Yeah.
I can paint tons of those skeletons. I have an a Tomb King army, and I was doing the Skeletal Horsemen.
Yeah.
I can do that all in one day. I can do 24 horsemen with the skeletal steeds in one day, and you're talking applying one with just the skeletons themselves, because one, I'm going to prime it. I'm going to prime it white. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to use bone white. Then I'm going to use just a little darker wash and put over the skeletons, and that could be done all in one day. 24 skeleton. Yep, that's easy.
Now, when you're holding your miniatures and painting, do you have gloves on? Do you have like a little? Some people suggest using tweezer tools to hold on to it.
No, I wouldn't even do that. You know, the best thing to do is, especially since you're going to be picking up the miniature a lot and everything, and this is one thing that you really need also is a bright light. And I'm not talking about the light from the ceiling. You need to get one of those little things that you can like connect to your table,
right? And
has a high beam light, and you really will need that. And make sure it's one of those light bulbs that has that flat white instead of that real intense bright light in one little small area, because you can't see too well underneath that. So that's important. But what I normally do is I get a soup can. It's really funny because I was eating soup today. You take a soup can, you're going to turn it upside down.
Right.
So you're going to have the bottom of that. You can use a soup can or something similar. It doesn't make a difference. What I do is I get putty, the size of a dime.
Okay.
You put the putty on top of the can and smash it into the bottom of the can, so you'll have that putty there. You're going to take the base of the miniature and then press it into the putty. So now when you start turning it around and doing all the stuff, you're not actually touching the mini. You use the can. You're holding the can to lift it up to paint. You see where I'm coming from?
Using the soup can.
That's what I do.
Okay.
Yeah, use the soup can, and then if you need to turn it, just rotate your hand holding the can, and you can turn the mini. It's much more. It's easier. I know some people that hold in the hand, and you know, if your hands shake, well, you're going to have a problem. But then again, it doesn't matter if your hands shake holding the can; it's still going to shake. So it just varies, you know.
If you leave it on the table and it's a high enough can, then you probably don't have to worry about picking it up too much. So.
Not really, not at all. But the purpose of picking up the can and everything is to lift it up so you can get a good look at it, so you can get it close to your face and everything. There'll be times where the miniature's drying and you want to start doing some other things to it while the paint is still wet. And that's really a rare occurrence with some people and everything. The paint on a miniature, when the paint on there is still drying because they're trying to put a mixture in there. I do that a lot with Battletech minis when I give them the camouflage look or something, or if I'm mixing blacks and whites for the snow terrain, because I like that swirl, and it just depends. You know, it could be a collage. It just depends.
Cool. And I think the last thing I wanted to ask you about this is what can you explain the dry brush versus the wet brush technique?
Oh, that's easy and everything. It simply is what it is. When I get a paintbrush and I want a dry brush, and that's, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do a small video of what a dry brushing technique looks like with those Hearst art molds that I do. Simply, dry brushing is basically where you take a brush. It's going to be dry. Now, it doesn't naturally have to be dry all the time. It can be wet, but what happens is it's a dry brush. You're going to take the brush, stick it in the paint. Now, it depends on how big of a brush it is. If you don't want a lot of paint, then just a dab, you're going to have a napkin to the side, and you're going to dab that brush a couple times on that napkin to get rid of that excess residue. But there's still going to be just a tiny trace of paint on there, and then you're just going to touch the miniature where you dab it, you stab it, you brush on it, or whatever, and that's what it means by dry brush. Normally, you're not using any water whatsoever on that dry brush.
Okay.
That's the purpose. When I'm doing regular painting, well, what I do is I'll put a drop of paint there, take my brush, I'm going to wet it up, stick it in paint, swirl it around a little bit, wipe off the excess, and then do that. It just depends. But usually dry brushing, the brush is dry, completely dry when you stick in the paint. Unlike the other technique, just simply, wet brush or whatever.
Right. Okay. So now we're done. We're finished with the painting and putting the details on and everything we needed to do. We're happy with it. Now, do we use a clear coat sealant, or do you use any type of paint sealant, or?
Okay, now this is where you want the miniature to sit at least a good 24 hours.
Okay.
You want it to make sure that it's completely bone dry before you do sealant. And you got to be very careful with sealant out there. There's a number of them. I can't think of the one brand I use right now. I went down there. I will tell you that I am not impressed with Warhammer's paint sealant.
I got one from Walmart. There was a clear coat one.
Yeah, you know what? I think that one might be fine too as well. But before you do it, test it. If you're not sure of the product, test it on a test subject to see how it works. The problem I had with the Warhammer, the Games Workshop sealant, was that for some reason when I painted it, when I used that sealant on an acrylic painted miniature, let me use a Tomb King model for example, the paint actually lightened. It became so light. I have no clue why it did that. It looked horrible. So that miniature had to be tossed. So I don't use that sealant anymore. But Yeah, make sure, it just depends on what kind of mini you use and whether you want the glossy sealant, the semi-glossy, or the dull color. Just be real careful on your choice. And when you spray that on, you don't need no heavy coat. However, after you go over it once, you might want to go over it a second time. Just make sure that the first coat is completely dry before you do the second coat.
Okay. And then after you put the sealant on, how long would you wait then?
I would let it rest for about another day.
And then you're okay to move it around and display it and play war games with it.
You got it. And, another thing I want to add while we're on miniatures and everything, put some terrain on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, use some scrub, use some meadows. There's a new meadows out. I like that terrain and everything. That's what I do with most of my minis. Put little terrain there, rocks, dirt, or whatever that fits the typical, terrain for where you might find that creature, that humanoid or whatever. Actually looks pretty good.
Now, what about touching up? Because over time, paint fades. Sometimes you get a little rough with the mini, things like that.
I'll be realistic about it. I had miniatures, that after, a lot of them over the years, the paint's going to chip. It's going to dry off. And now, depending on where the touch-up's at, it might have no impact on it unless someone's really, really looking at it and everything. I'll just be realistic about it. If a miniature gets really that messed up and like a big piece of paint falls off or it's chipped, it's really nasty, touch-up paint could work. I know some people that are really good at touch-up paint and mix it in there very good. But let's say it's the face and the face is all smashed up and then you start applying it, it's probably very difficult to duplicate the same technique you used prior to the flesh tones. You might just have to just strip the whole thing down.
Oh.
That's very rare, though, unless it's a really beautiful miniature and everything. Very rarely, but just, touch up, it's no big deal.
Yeah, because I know a lot of I played a couple games and some of the minis were worn, and the guy's like, "Oh, it's from the oils on your hand. I have to just restrip it and repaint it." I thought that was a little much, but I guess that's what you have to do.
Yeah, it is. Just make sure you use some good stripper and everything. There's some good stuff out there. That's a pretty penny, though, about $6 to $7 a bottle. That spray can to strip it off, and it strips it off instantly. And I prefer to use that because it strips off every bit of paint off there.
Right. I wonder if you could use Brasso for that.
For what?
For stripping the paint off of something.
Oh, I don't know if you use Brasso. Brasso, that polishes things, so I have no clue. I heard people use simple green. Some people like just I heard people boiling the miniature in water.
Well, that works, yeah.
I think it would work. Because remember now, this is acrylic paints. These are water-soluble paints. So, but then like I said, if you use stripper will no doubt in my mind, this stuff called Clean Strip, it's about $7 a can. That's what I use. Because it takes it out, and not in 15, 20 seconds, all the paint is gone.
Yeah, I only suggested Brasso because when I did some painting of Legos a while back, I used Brasso to strip the paint off of them.
Oh, okay.
So I was wondering if it worked on the lead minis too. It might.
Oh, I would not know.
Yeah.
Lead minis are, it's pretty interesting. Don't use enamel paint.
Oh, yeah, I know, yeah.
You need to use enamel paint on models, like toy models, ships and planes and all that kind of stuff. And
it was acrylic paint, right?
Use acrylic, which is water-soluble. Now, some people use acrylic paints on their miniatures. Hey, go for it if that's what you're doing and you're really good at it. I have no problem with it, but no, I don't like acrylic because once that paint is on, it's on. It ain't coming off unless you get some really good stripper.
So what do you want them to use then?
Well, as far as what, to get it off or
no?
Paint?
What type of paint do you want them to use?
Use acrylics, anything that's water soluble.
Oh, okay.
Paints I prefer Vallejo. Vallejo paints is really good, and the Warhammer. I'm sorry, not Warhammer, but Games Workshop paints. They just released their whole new line. Their paints are just as good.
Okay.
Vallejo is superior in the fact that when you buy their bottle, their paint will last much longer because and it has to do with the opening of the bottle. With the Vallejo paints, the opening is a pinhole openings for the paint to come out. What that means is that the paint inside the bottle will have less access to open air, so lessening the chances of drying. Whereas the opening of the bottles for Games Workshop paints is about as big as a dime.
Yeah.
So as painting, it has more access to air and it dries out much more.
Oh, well, there you go. And the best place to buy the acrylic paints is definitely Walmart.
Oh, you know what? those acrylic paints are just as good too. Those acrylic paints are just as good because that's what Vallejo and the Games Workshop, they're pretty much acrylic. They're water soluble. Yeah, those things only cost like $1. Now, you know, they're about $3.60, $3.50 for one bottle of either the Games Workshop or the Vallejo. But those acrylic paints at Walmart or at Michael's or those hobby stores, they're only like $1, $1.29.
Yeah, you can get them for even cheaper than that if you get them on sale.
They're just as good. Those paints work just as well.
Cool. All right, well, thank you for helping us answer some questions from people in the audience about how to paint minis.
Well, I could do more, but, you know, this is for the basics.
Yeah, they just wanted some basic... I know a couple people wrote in, they wanted some basic tips how to do some painting of minis, so I figured, with the Arts and Crafts show, we'll put it in there.
Now, I do recommend one other thing. Go to YouTube. YouTube has some awesome videos on there. Just look for basic painting things. Go to the Games Workshop site. They got some great utilization tools that help you do painting. Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a lot of how-to techniques on there as well. Oh, yes, definitely. All right, well, thank you for joining us this week, Will. Well, you're always with us every week, but anyway. Said, keep it original, keep it old school. Good night, everybody. Bye.
Roll for initiative.